Hello, guys. David Vose here. Oh, buddy, what's a beautiful day out here in this old Red Mesa today here in New Mexico. Boy, I'm just enjoying the weather. It's nice and cool. A lot of clouds rolling in. Hope you're having a wonderful day where you are. Well, friends, yesterday we did a video and it got a lot of people interested and people wanted to watch it and they're watching it. Well, I had a link in the bottom, and as soon as that video was done and I uploaded it, they made that other video private. Now, there's actually, I think there was two videos. I think it was on the Shalom Girl and the other lady channel, but both of them are gone now. So I don't know what happened. Obviously, this information's sensitive. I don't know if Elon Musk, or the powers that be took it down, or if they just got scared and took it down. But anywho, y'all wanted more of this information and you wanted to know if there's any way you could find a link. I don't have another link, it's gone. So we'll have to see if they put it back up in the future. But I will continue today in this venue. I'm going to share with you a whole lot of information that I think you'll find very interesting and very important information. And we need to get this information out to the world that people need to know, especially before the election. We're going to show in this video that Trump is in bed with Elon. And Elon, my friends, is from a bloodline that is being set up to bring in the beast and the Antichrist. This is all according to our prophecies in the Bible. They know who they are, they know what they're doing, and this is serious. And I'm going to show you by reading you a little article, and then I'm going to give some other information as we read. But this is very, very, very interesting. So let me read you from this particular website here. It's called Eugenics, of all things. Technocracy Incorporated, Elon Musk's family business. You got to hear this. So, here we go. CBC article. Back in the 1930s, a group called Technocracy Incorporated wanted to recognize society by putting scientists in charge. The movement flamed out, but its underlying message still appeals to many in Silicon Valley. Elon Musk's maternal grandfather, Joshua Haldeman, 1902 to 1974, was part of the movement. He was a chiropractor and a political figure in Canada who later moved to South Africa. Elon Musk's Shabbat Jewish grandfather, Joshua Haldeman, Canadian Technocracy movement. Elon Musk appears to be a child of the Illuminati, bred to present the mark of the beast. Elon Musk's Jewish grandfather, Joshua Haldeman, was part of the Canadian Technocracy movement in the 1930s and was brought to trial after Technocracy was banned, and Elon's grandfather was arrested. Joshua Haldeman fathered Elon's mother, May Haldeman, and her twin sister, Kay and May, in 1948. That's interesting because that was right after the war. After, at the beginning of the nation of Israel becoming a nation. After marrying his second wife, he had 5 total children. Joshua Haldeman took his entire family on expeditions to the Kalahari Desert of South Africa, searching for a lost civilization that many revisionists and alt historians consider part of the ancient city of Atlantis. Having lived in South Africa during her youth, May Haldeman was allegedly into African secret societies and witchcraft. Now you know where Elon got his little ideas about putting these little idols in a circle like Stonehenge and basically doing some kind of a ritual, which ended up pulling Rosemary, who we talked about, the Shalom girl we talked about yesterday, who was kind of like his servant, or was going to be one of his wives. They were going to breed her, whatever. We talked about that yesterday, but she was like a babysitter for a long time and watched over Elon from the time he was very little. She went into his room one day and he had these figures around in a circle like a crazy occult ritual. And this black vortex appeared and sucked them into this place, and they went into this, I don't know, satanic, like, dream or out of body. I don't know. They went down into this vortex, and there were these false deities, like astrological figures, deities with hawk heads and wolf heads and different crazy deities from Sumerian tablets or something. And so Shalom Girl Rosemary, aka Mary, she starts praying in the name of Jesus, Lord deliver us, Lord deliver us, and back out they came. And there's Elon Musk, this little 2-year-old boy or whatever it was. I can't remember. I think he was about 2 years old. He's standing there. She's just like a little teenage girl, about 13, babysitting this 2-year-old Elon Musk. And he says, what's the matter? You don't like my friends? So it was some kind of a weird ritual. So I guess this is where they get this voodoo ritual from South Africa. And it was brought over with his mother, who was called Light. And they named Rosemary Moon, who was supposed to marry Elon Musk. But the story goes that May was actually connected to the CIA mind control subject Charles Manson and the Manson crime family. Given Elon Musk's fame, it's noteworthy to mention Google and Microsoft, or Bing, complete omission of key phrases such as May Haldeman, May Musk, etc. Clear digital whitewashing. Kay Haldeman allegedly visited Charles Manson in prison, becoming familiar with the crime family by providing TVs and other luxuries to the crime family. All these girls were out there at this Hollywood set in the desert of Charles Manson's cult, where the Bee Gees went and where, the Beatles got some of their songs, and the Mamas and the Papas were there. Doris Day knew him. All these great movie stars. And they would go and visit him at this set. But then he went to prison. Then Kay Haldeman allegedly visited Charles Manson in prison. She became familiar with the crime family by providing TVs. Kay's visitation with Manson allegedly led to the impregnation of Kay with Elon's sister Tosca. Okay, get this. When May Haldeman, Elon's mother, would go and visit Charles Manson, who, by the way, has the swastika on his forehead, which is an NAZ symbol. Now, remember, we're going to show here, and you all know this, that Elon Musk goes directly back to the Swiss Haldeman family that runs the Swiss bank, that has the whole country, the whole Swiss country, which is the only country that's neutral when there's war, because it runs the entire world by means of the bank. Now, that country has 7 members. It's the 7 heads of the dragon. Whether it fulfills this in some coinky-dinkle way, or whether this is the actual fulfillment, and it may come as a surprise, but I actually believe this is not a coinky-dink. These banners and heraldry were created very purposefully to depict their ancestry. Now, in this picture, you see the Haldeman heraldry. You can see at the bottom, that's the Haldeman heraldry, but it's actually the heraldry of the royal, lineage of Switzerland. They ran Switzerland. If you look at the red stripes, there's 3, and there's 4 white stripes. So there's 3 and 4, which makes 7. And that's the 7 heads of their state. Now, the top little thing looks like a horn. That's what goes back to the Isis heraldry. That was more or less like the horns of the bull, and the moon would be in the middle. So it goes back to images that you can find in Egyptian and Sumerian heraldry and mythology, and their archons and deities. And there you see it on the temple walls. There's Isis. She's got the horns and the moon in the middle. And that symbolism means that they trace their line back to the pharaohs. Like I say, this does not necessarily is anything good or bad. All royal bloodlines go back to the pharaohs and to King David. The royal bloodlines go all the way back to Adam, whichever side you're on. So the heraldry, they're absolutely accurate and were carefully created by their priests or historians that knew their lineages, and this heraldry is very accurate. So we have in Britain, we've got the lion, and we've got the unicorn, and all the jack, and going back to Jacob. It's the symbolisms there in the book of Genesis where it talks about Dan biting the horse's heel. Well, Dan is a serpent, by the way, which is Scorpio, and he's biting Sagittarius, the horse's heel. The horse rider has a bow. He slips and shoots the bow, and it hits the sun, and the sun goes out, and this causes the darkness of world tragedy and cataclysm. I know. It's very, very, very accurate. It's astrology. And so you see the heraldry of the British, and the Irish, and the Scottish, and it definitely goes back to the 10 tribes. But with the Vikings and with the Swedish heraldry, we see it going back to the evil side. So you look at this heraldry, and I may show you some more pictures, but it has this dragon and these 7 heads. And so Switzerland, and this is true of like Sweden and Norway, and these are the Viking areas, but there in Switzerland, there are 7 heads of the state of Switzerland, and they have 10, I forget what they call them, ministries or departments or something that run that country, or the bank, and they then have a city over the kings of the earth. Now, we already talked about the Judeans that were in Babylon, and there was a house built there in the land of Shinar, which is the Babylonian Talmud that literally set up a kingdom over the kingdoms of the earth. But you see, they keep moving the same. It doesn't have a permanent earthly seat. It sits on the 7 heads. And so when they move to Switzerland, these Bavarians and the Bavarian Illuminati, they have various different headquarters. They have the Illuminati headquarters. They have the CIA, the KGB. They have all these different places that you might consider central programs for them to control. Certainly the Switzerland area of CERN, where they made the internet, and where the great bank is that finances all the evil around the world, is key. So there are 7 heads and 10 horns there. And that, I'll show you a picture here of this Haldeman heraldry, which is their family line, the Haldeman family line, that is showing directly in the heraldry their roots back to what they believe is Isis and these Egyptian Sumerian deities. Now, a lot of people believe that this means they're evil because they're into the occult. Well, the occult is just something modern. These symbols go back for thousands of years. They're in your Bible. And so Isis isn't evil. Osiris and Set is the good and the evil. And it is the ancient religion. It's not these symbols that are evil. It's not the mysteries that are written in the stars. It is the fact that they turn them upside down because they're saying they're from the bottom side, which is they follow the dark path. That's all this is. the symbols themselves, the mysteries are written about. The Apostle Paul says, look how I know the mysteries. These are the mysteries that were in the temple that are written in the stars. So there's nothing wrong with the fact that, they look at these symbols. But when you look at how they portray the symbols, you see their knowledge of them. We don't know them because they've told us to stay out of it, because they don't want us to learn what all this means. When they have a Baphomet, it's a figure that is both male and female. It has various animal parts, but the head is a goat because it's the goat that is at the bottom of the wheel in Capricorn. But yet it has aspects of all the astrological wheel, just like all the sphinxes and in the Hebrew cherubim, which has the four face. The face in the front is the bull, because they start theirs in Taurus, but it's still the four fixed signs. And so the phoenix starts with the lion, but it's still Leo and Taurus and Aquarius, the man, and the eagle. They always have these wings of an eagle. So all of this is not evil. Baphomet is simply a symbol of astrology. Astrology is the kingdom of this world ruled over by the archons, but they are not following Uranus, the father of heaven, or the kingdom of Uranus, which is the top side of the wheel, which is the basilia, if you look at the Greek. It's not, we call it the kingdom of Uranus, but it's the basilia. And that basilia means the realm or the reigning realm over the other realms. So it's the highest realm, which is the stars around Polaris, which never go down and die, but they are the immortal ones. And the immortal ones are in the daytime sky, Father Uranus. So they don't worship Uranus. They take Saturn, who rules over the bottom of the wheel in Capricorn and Pisces and Aquarius. So going on, we find that they know these mysteries, and they're telling you, they're wishing for us to go back into the Aquarian age. But the New Testament talks about going unto the light. The night is far spent. The day is at hand. Christ coming is like the light or the sun that rises on the horizon in the east and shines all the way into the west. It's going to be the daytime, the summer, the great age of Uranus. And this is why when Jesus was on the earth, he says, the kingdom of Uranus, or the basilia of Uranus, is at hand, or it is near, it is approaching. Because the last 2,000 years was the age of Aries, and we're about to go into the age of Taurus, the bull. However, because of the fact that we have the precession of the equinoxes, we lose a month every so often. So we have to add a month, an intercalary month. And so from Purim or Easter, Astarte, to Passover is exactly 30 days. Christ was our Passover, but we've got to go back a month. We've got to add another month, so that now we're about to actually have the rising of this dawn, right? The dawn's early light is now with the Constitution and 1776. But right on their heels in 1776, these evil Illuminati created with Adam Weishaupt over there in Bavaria, they created their devil that's coming up out of the bottomless pit, this dragon, this beast. Now, this is all out there to be understood, but Christians and the Western world that is taught the world everything that they know today has kept us from this knowledge by saying that it's evil. The witches or the wise women and the wizards and the wise men with their potions or their herbs and their healing and the mysteries and the speaking of the tongues was outlawed. Right? The oracles and the mysteries of Aphrodite and the temple at Artemis, which is the Virgin Mother. This was all outlawed, and the holy flame was put out in the year, I think, 395, which is when they burned the Alexandrian library and got rid of all this and called it anathema, and went back like a dog to its vomit to the old law and to the worship of the darkness at the deity at the bottom of the wheel, which in the Jewish scriptures is Yahweh. The craziest thing about all of this is they have the entire Gentile world believing that they're only just but dogs, and they're going to be water catchers and woodcutters for them in the kingdom, that we're peasants, that we don't even deserve to be treated like humans. They are not the pagans. We're the pagans. We're the Gentile. Word pagan means Gentile. And they want us to abandon, and we're really the 10 tribes that are lost. Right? And Christ came to save all the world. But he said to them, you will not see me henceforth until you say, blessed is he that comes in the name of the Lord. I've come in my Father's name, and you've rejected me. But when he comes in his own name, I am Yahweh, and that is my name, and the nations shall know that I am the Lord. Everyone will bow down to me. I am jealous. I am vengeance. It says, when he comes in his own name, you will receive him. So they said, crucify him, and may his blood be upon us and our children. Well, Jesus says, then there will be wrath. In the book of Matthew and Luke, there will be wrath upon this people, and Jerusalem shall be trampled on by the Gentiles. And Paul says, when the Gentiles be come in, then, because the promises are very precious to the Lord, he keeps all his promises, he will bring them to the Lord, because every knee shall bow and every tongue confess. That's why he says, you will not see me henceforth until you say, blessed is he that comes in the name of the Lord. That's what's about to happen over there. This is the great war between the light and the darkness, the sons of light and the sons of darkness. The 12 tribes are the Lord's children, a great multitude of every nation, tribe, and tongue. But this particular group of people have a covenant with death, right? And all the laws and the carnal commandments, they reject the love of the truth, which is grace, that they might be saved, which is saved from the wrath that's coming. The wrath is the judgment of Yahweh, and it's coming, friends. And so they're trying to bring up the beast, as Aleister Crowley and Jack Parsons and John Dee and Edward Kelly. Elon Musk, whether Rosemary understands it or not, was either literally at that time bringing Satan up out of the bottomless pit in front of her in his bedroom, or it was just a little ritual, pre-ritual, and he's doing it right now before our eyes. And friends, that beast is coming, and it is AI. He's going to come up, and they're going to make an image unto the beast, unto this government, and they will cause it to speak. And whoever doth not worship, they get a mark in their hand or their forehead, which is the law of Moses, they will not be able to buy or sell. So we need to prepare now and get out of her, my people, if we don't want to share with her in her sins. That's the mother of the harlots, Jerusalem, and her 2 harlots are Samaria and Judea, according to the book of Hosea. So it was Kay Haldeman, her sister, who would visit with the Mansons, and then she's the one who evidently impregnated Charles Manson with Elon's sister, Tosca. So Rosemary says it was May. Now remember, Kay and May are twin sisters. So Rosemary, I will believe her because it's an eyewitness account. Maybe this is a misprint, but I believe it was May and not Kay. So I'm reading this in this article, and they're saying it was Kay, her sister, her twin sister. But the child was Tosca, which is Elon's sister, and it wouldn't be Elon's sister if it was Kay. It had to be May. So there's either a misprint here, or there's another mystery. And maybe the 2 twin sisters are really the same person with 2 agendas. But this is something we can't really know because nobody's going to tell us, and we're trying to dig deep and find clues. I'm just telling you what we know. So they would provide a place for Charles Manson with the swastika and all these young girls. Now, this is important because the young girls goes back all the way to the Switzerland country where they had the slave labor, and I'll read about that to you here in a minute. I think Switzerland had legalized slavery up until recent times, like 1900 or something. And they were all these beautiful women that they would breed with. And many of these slaves that they bred would be sent around the world to be kind of like slaves to this elite family. One then of these groups came down from Canada, went to Canada, and basically took over the Canadian government and started this technocracy movement. And they threw them out of Canada, along with Jehovah's Witnesses, by the way. I'll show you that article. The outbreak of World War II found Scott in Winnipeg preaching or predicting an economic collapse within 4 years, speaking to an audience of 1,500 in October of 1939. He also called for a referendum on whether people wished the present price systems to continue. By June of 1940, with the war in Europe going badly, the Canadian government suddenly announced the banning of technocracy, along with the dozen other organizations, including Jehovah's Witnesses and the Communist Party. Now, this is interesting, guys, and telling, because the NAZIs during World War II banned communists and Judeans, supposedly, and Jehovah's Witnesses. But remember, they weren't really the Judeans. It's just the other group of Judeans that weren't going along with the party. They massacred many of the Sephardic particular individuals, but it was the Ashkenazis that was really actually running the show. But Jehovah's Witnesses always find their way in the top tiers of these that were banned because they were used as propaganda and other very nefarious things. In the House of Commons on July 16th, Prime Minister Mackenzie King defended the ban by saying one of the objectives of technocracy was to overthrow the government and the constitution of the country by force, which is what they're doing here in the United States now. This has been going on. They've been banning and there's been a war. So Walter Friars, now 94, remembers, "We were astonished when the RCMP padlocked our section premises and took records, furniture, everything. No charges were made. Other technocrats were not so lucky. A Regina chiropractor, Dr. J.N. Haldeman, which is, yes, you got it, Elon Musk's family, his grandfather, faced trial as a member of the illegal organization. He was acquitted. F.E. Demorest of Prince Albert, Saskatchewan, was fined $25 for having paid for a newspaper ad protesting the ban. The conviction was overturned on appeal, and as far as is known, no other convictions were sustained. No evidence was presented that technocracy had advocated violence, and the ban was rescinded without explanation on October the 15th, 1943. This was literally the NAZI's plan to take over Canada, and after the war, they're still going on trying to take over us now. So they banned the technocracy and Jehovah's Witnesses, and they ended up then fleeing Canada. They went to California, started Silicon Valley, and this cult. Charles Manson was probably like some kind of a seed of this seeding, right? They used him. They thought of him as the grand poobah of this grand cult where they would breed these girls. And many of the people in the music industry and Hollywood were children of this breeding process. This is what we're finding. Now, they say that May Haldeman, Elon's mother, when she was 23, was arrested in this group of girls. She was one of these girls. I doubt whether she was just one of the girls. She's kind of like the Queen Mother. And this is all verified too by the Shalom girl that we talked about yesterday in her story, because she was one of those girls that was bred. Her father was one of these German, elite evil people who married one of these virgins that they collected over in Spain, and little blue-eyed blonde girls. If you look at Shalom girl, she's very light-skinned, freckles with red hair, and quite attractive when she was young. It was a special breeding program, and she was bred specifically to take care of Elon, and she was supposed to marry him, but she ran away into the woods, and they tried burning her car and killing her a couple of different ways. So a lot of people say, oh, likely stories. They don't believe it. Well, at this point, I just did a video about it, and after I got done with that video, within minutes, the whole thing was deleted. Now, I don't know if my video is going to be deleted here soon or if this one will be, but the video that I was watching to get a lot of this information, it was an eyewitness account by the Shalom girl, her video on her channel, and the lady that was interviewing her. Those two people have deleted the channel or made them private or something. So they would give TVs, they must have been part of the group that was providing the place for Charles Manson's cult to stay at the movie industry set. They provided them with food, cigarettes, marijuana. The girls would service certain people. They were bred, they were breeding. We don't know. And so Elon's mother would visit Mason and allegedly was impregnated. And this was the Elon's sister, Tosca. Now, something I saw today too that I'm reminded of is that Elon Musk's, Elon's father, had a relationship with his stepdaughter. I don't know. It's hard to untangle all of this, which stepdaughter it was or whatever. And they ended up having 2 kids. So it's like they're keeping this in the family, like they marry their sisters or their daughters or whatever to keep this bloodline. So I don't know what's going on there. You also are aware of the fact that Elon's had, I don't know how many wives, and has, I think, 10 children. And they're all named they're just numbers. Their names are just numbers. There's something very odd about this. It's like they're just being bred for some reason. So Kay's visitation with Mason led to the impregnation. So, like George W. Bush's mother, Barbara, being the offspring of the Satanist Aleister Crowley, which is something that's been going around, she looks a lot like him. I don't know if we have proof of that. But I do believe that all these individuals, the Bushes, the Musks, and all of these families are interbred and interrelated. I would have to believe that Aleister Crowley would have impregnated one or more of these elite families. This is very, very credible to me. And this would be why Bush was so important. He had a bank, his Prescott Bush, that financed the Germans during World War II. So it does seem very logical because, remember, Bill Gates became the head of Microsoft. His mother was on the board of IBM, which was a company that was created to put a mark on every human man, woman, and child, the racial identities of everyone. Charles Manson was about, he kept talking about the race wars that were coming. Well, it turns out that Mae Musk was the grandmother of this cult. Charles Manson, evidently one of her husbands, was the grandpapa of it. And they kept trying to get Charles Manson out of this prison into this insane asylum in Napa. And I have a picture of that. And it will blow your mind. Look at this thing. Holy moly, Batman. That is it looks bigger than Moscow. I don't know. But they used to do experiments on people in that. If you look at this insane asylum, it is bigger than almost like the Taj Mahal. And it looks freaky, gothic, and very evil. And the experiments that they did in there on people will absolutely blow your mind. And by the way, they're still doing it. California is a running medical experiment on the poor peasants. They call them the homeless. All of these homeless that are in California living on the streets are in and out of the mental hospitals. If there are, I don't know, what is it, 40 million people in California? I don't know. Probably almost half of them are on the street homeless, on drugs, mental pharmaceutical drugs, being experimented on. They give them drugs, experiment on them, do mental lobotomies on them. They are doing experiments on the populace in California, and they have been doing it for a long time. So, May Haldeman appears to be featured in a photo on the original Helter Skelter book. Now, this is a claim that was made, but we can't find the proof of it because it's been scrubbed from the internet. So in the Helter Skelter book, remember the Beatles album that had the Penny Lane song has Aleister Crowley on the cover. And John Lennon didn't know that Lucy in the Sky with Diamonds referred to LSD. This was a MK Ultra mind control program because Aleister Crowley brought these people from Paperclip over here, along with Charles Russell of Jehovah's Witnesses, and created Hollywood. And there were groups that Anton LaVey that was into the music industry, and all of these individuals made the space agencies, Jack Parsons, the CIA, and all of these came from these group that came over in Project Paperclip. So the CIA, there are many people that were agents for the CIA, and all of these individuals, like the Musks, are leading up this effort to deceive and take control of the government. You'll find that there were Haldemans in the government in the days of Nixon. Haldeman was a very important figure in Nixon's administration, and he was an ancestor of Elon Musk. And this is the information that I'm finding. This is some pictures, which is very interesting when I look at this picture, because it was about this time. I've got photos in my photo album where my mother and her sister, that they weren't twins, but they looked like it, they were standing in front of an aeroplane with a man named Kenner. And Kenner he had a plane. He invented an aeroplane called the Kenner plane, which was supposed to have been pivotal in the war efforts in World War II. Oh my goodness, isn't that amazing? Old Bert Kenner. To see my mother and her sister standing there with Bert Kenner, unbelievable. Well. I'm told it was pretty important, that engine, that Kenner engine. It was later sold to Lockheed. My grandmother and my aunt worked at Lockheed. My aunt, my mother's sister, had high clearance. And yeah, I don't know what was going on with all that. But they worked for years for Lockheed that ended up being the one who had the Kenner name, went with Lockheed. And my grandmother and my aunt worked for Lockheed, I guess, for years. They lived in Burbank, California for years. We used to go visit off and on, every year or two we'd go down there and visit my aunt, my grandma. But I was told that if it weren't for that plane, they might have lost the war or something. And I guess it was my Uncle Kenner, that built that engine. So, big tech billionaires, the four horsemen of the apocalypse, there are four very powerful billionaires, not deities, but Peter Thiel, Elon Musk, Mark Zuckerberg, and Mark Anderson are creating the internet.org. a world where nothing is true and all is a spectacle. And if we are to inquire how we got to a place of radical income inequality, post-truth reality, and the looming potential for a second American Civil War, we need look no further than these four, the biggest wallets, to paraphrase historian Timothy Snyder, paying for the most blinding lights, and I call them the technocrats. In recognition of the influence of the technocracy movement, founded in the 1930s by the Elon Musk's grandfather, Joshua Haldeman, the technocrats make up a kind of interlocking directorate of Silicon Valley, each investing in or sitting on the boards of the other companies. Their vast cyber and digital domain controls your personal information, affects how billions of people live, work, love, and sow online chaos, inciting mob violence and sparking runs on the stocks. Elon Musk, The Abyss and the Great Deception by Kathy Fox, Technocracy and the Trilateral Commission. In that video, it talks about we are evaluating an extensive amount of very credible whistleblower information that Joshua Haldeman faked his death, alleged plane crash, and worked for decades in San Francisco with the CIA mind control experiments in San Francisco at Stanford University. Interesting, they could just fake their death and go on and have some other life. Well, John Lennon, who said it wasn't about LSD, he supposedly died. All these individuals, they just get to a point and they're gone. Marilyn Monroe, whoop, they're gone. I think a lot of these individuals really were murdered, like Michael Jackson, maybe John Lennon, Jim Croce, John Denver, because when they get to a point, if they have a lot of records and a lot of money to be made off their legacy, they don't want anyone to control those songs. They have to be controlled by the elite. Michael Jackson wanted control of his songs. Prince wanted control of his songs. And look what happened to him. Britney Spears. These poor children just end up getting missing, or they were told they're crazy and they put them in a crazy house. This would place Haldeman in interlocked relationship with Larry Ellison, Oracle founder, and his convicted pedophile baby daddy, the First Church of Psychoscience, Oakland, California, founder Reverend Dr. Hugh Robert Sinclair Moore. Whistleblowers, including his former nanny, who goes by the moniker Shalom Girl, which we saw and talked about yesterday, on YouTube places Haldeman in San Francisco for many years after his death and working with the CIA mind control programs at Stanford University. Stanford, not far from where I lived, and were Jehovah's Witnesses who were also banned with the technocrats out of Canada and came down together and started this whole program of bringing Germans over and creating Hollywood and the cults and the crazy houses and the mental institutions and the record player and the record industry. That was all originally done by Jehovah's Witnesses. See, each group has its own purpose. Jehovah's Witnesses was a large mind control experiment, and the people that were in their organization, there were lots of them, millions of them, they could not tell lies. They were mind controlled, and they would do anything they were told, and they could work as people, CEOs, good little peasants that would work in these factories in Hollywood, in Lockheed Martin, in Boeing, in all these companies, Mormons in Area 51 and FBI, CIA, all had to be either a Mason, a Jehovah's Witness, or a Mormon or something, because they had to be able to trust them that and they would have to sign an oath. A friend of mine told me that they were at their best friend's wedding who were marrying we'll call them a Bavarian, from a Judean. They were marrying a Judean, and before they were allowed to be the best man, they had to sign an agreement that they would never speak against or turn against them. And if they ever did, they would have the right to. So they take oaths. That's how they control the world. A crazy story that I've told before, but I think only once maybe, or partially I might have mentioned another time. But, I grew up being one of Jehovah's Witnesses. I didn't realize that we took this kind of an oath. Everything about Jehovah's Witnesses was completely like something was going on, but we never knew it. Maybe the world could see it, but we couldn't see it on the inside. Here we are in these little windowless buildings, like a little hall, like a Masonic hall. We weren't Christians. We didn't call ourselves Christians, really. We were Jehovah's Witnesses. But, in order to join Jehovah's Witnesses, you had to get baptized. You're like, well, that's normal. Everybody gets baptized, right? But it was more than just a baptism. They took you in another room. They made you answer all these questions. It was basically like you were agreeing to the whole thing. Like, once we've told you this agreement and you agree to it, and you know that if you ever screw up or do anything wrong, we got the right to just squeeze you. You're gone. So you basically agree to it when you're baptized. It's just a covenant. And this is why they're really allowed to just spiritually murder you. If you don't want to be a part of them anymore, if they don't like what you're doing, or if you get thrown out, you lose your family. You can't get a job with them anymore, which they probably control a lot of that. And you're just done forever. You're gone. No one can speak to you again, as if you never existed. And a lot of these individuals go off and kill themselves, just suicide themselves, because it's very difficult to lose your mind and your family and your religion and your job and everything else, and you don't understand what's going on. Very few can actually get through the process of their spiritual murder, which is what they actually call it, right? They're executing you in a sense. Mormons have a similar thing where you're excommunicated. They take oaths too, and so do Masons and other groups, Scientologists and what have you. So his extensive international travel to promote chiropractic medicine is also dubious. It is likely, the old Joshua Haldeman, grandfather of Elon, was supposed to be a chiropractor, but it's saying he's dubious. Probably wasn't a chiropractor. It's likely it was a cover story for his work for the Pilgrim Society at the British M16 intelligence and its lackeys in the CIA and the Tavistock Institute. Now, here's where I was telling you about Nixon's cabinet and the Haldeman. Nixon's cabinet, Haldeman, Kissinger, Watergate, gold, oil, currency, and the Pilgrim Society. H.R. Haldeman, 1926 to 1993. A common maternal 10-generation grandson of Elon Musk, was Nixon's White House chief of staff. Haldeman helped orchestrate the Pilgrim Society takedown of Richard Nixon as a U.S. president, led by Henry Kissinger in order to kill the gold standard and institute oil dollar, first fiat currency. He was sent to prison as a slap on the hand, then released just 18 months later. The Haldeman blood connections emanate from Bern, Zurich, Switzerland. This is what we were saying. The Haldemans could go back to Switzerland. Closely tied to the Klaus Schwab and Anthony Fauci family, as in Satan's bottomless chasm, hell. Fauci's maternal abyss name is certainly appropriate for Dr. the V. Death. Haldeman's bio says, during the war, Dr. Haldeman was so busy with his political and economic research that he had little time for his practice and lived at the YMCA. We know now that at that time, the YMCA was being used by British and American Babylonian Radhanite merchant banker cultists to support Russian Bolshevism, push forward communism in China through Mao Zedong, and organize the United Nations. Given his strenuous political activity, he was most certainly interlocked with the British Pilgrim Society, and its pagan Babylonian Radhanite drive for world control. Now there's the true control over all of this, the Babylonian Talmud that to this day live in Baghdad. And they control the beliefs and the actions of all of this elite cult all over the world. Boom! Sir Frederick Haldeman, Elon Musk's maternal 8th generation great uncle, brother of Jacob Haldeman, Elon Musk's 8th generation grandfather, Governor General of Quebec. Governor General of Quebec, British general who attacked at Bunker Hill, spy chief of Alexander Hamilton, agent number 7, oversaw Alexander Hamilton's founding of the America's first 4 banks, funded by the British Babylonian Radhanite merchant banker religious cult. Sir Frederick Haldeman, Governor-in-Chief, Quebec, Proclamation, British Canada. The Social Credit Party he formed helped to form the political landscape in Quebec. Sinclair's family ties. Don Sinclair was also part of his Technocracy, Incorporated. Elon's namesake, John Elon Haldeman. Other members of his family tree can be traced to working with Benjamin Franklin during the Revolutionary War, the father of electricity. Jacob Haldeman was elected to be a member of the Committee of the Public Safety for Raffo Township, Lancaster County, Pennsylvania, during the Revolutionary War. Prior to the breakout of hostilities in Pennsylvania with Great Britain, the Committee of Safety was established by the legislature to act as an executive body for providing defenses of the state against invasion and insurrection, for calling upon men to arms, providing them with arms, ammunition, and supplies. George Ross, later a relative through marriage, was a leading member of his committee upon its formation. Benjamin Franklin was the president, and Colonel George Ross was the vice president of this group. The executive orders of the committee filtered down to the county level and then to the township level. Jacob's duties were to see that Raffo Township's quota of men, supplies, and ammunition were met, that the fighting men's families were provided for, that a civil defense system was set up in case of invasion, and that insurrection of any type in this area was stopped or reported on. In Lancaster County, there was a large number of Quakers, Mennonites, and Germans that were opposed to bringing arms and other of British birth that adhered to the British cause. Haldeman, also known as Haldeman, traced back to Switzerland. E. Haldeman published Benjamin Franklin's autobiography, and here's a lovely quote by E. Haldeman. Go down at noon and rob the other fellows of what they have made during the morning. E. Haldeman Julius. The Haldemans also wrote books on Nikola Tesla. Emanuel Haldeman Julius is best known as the publisher of the Little Blue Books, popular, inexpensive paperbacks, on a variety of subjects that sold hundreds of millions of copies. For several years, he was also the editor of the most prominent socialist newspaper in America. The appeal to reason. His wife, Marcette Haldeman Julius, was his partner in business, as well as family matters, though best known for her publishing company, headquartered in the little town of Girard in southeast Kansas. The two were also writers, as evidenced by their jointly authored novel, Dust, published in 1921. H.R. Haldeman Nixon aide famous for Haldeman Dairies. The search for Yost's replacement finally settled on George H.W. Bush, newly defeated congressman from Texas who was looking for a higher profile job to further his political career. Bush lobbied hard for the UN job, but was initially offered only a White House staff position by Haldeman. Bush and Haldeman then went to see Nixon, and in Haldeman's words, Bush made such a good pitch to the president about what he would like to do at the UN in the way of really being an advocate for the P, not only at UN, but in overall New York community, that P decided this was in fact a better use of Bush than having him in the White House. Bush took charge in New York in February 1971, and one of his first tasks, according to Haldeman, was to clean out the UN office, firing all political appointees that were not with the president before the election. Their goal was to get China into their United Nations to develop their technology and ideology. On August 2nd, Rogers announced the Dual Representation Initiative, and U.S. diplomats in New York and worldwide lobbied hard for the concept, but it was a lost cause. To make matters worse, Kissinger was going to be in China again, arranging for the president's visit just as the Chinese representation vote took place. Rogers felt, to use Haldeman's blunt words, it would louse up the UN debate. On October 25th, the important question vote to admit Beijing lost by a narrow margin, and U.S. efforts to make expulsion of Taiwan an important question also failed. As Bush reported, the bandwagon psychology set in the Albanian resolution passed overwhelmingly. The reaction from the right wing that Nixon feared happened immediately. A furious Governor Ronald Reagan of California was on the phone to Nixon at midnight on October the 25th. Nixon returned Reagan's call the next morning. Reagan insisted that the president go on television and announced that the future of the United States would not abide by future UN votes. Nixon said that he couldn't do that. Rogers then called Reagan and tried to calm him down, but the governor was not pleased to hear that Rogers had made a statement on the vote that had not called on Congress to cut UN funding. The Technocracy Incorporated joined into the Democratic Party. Interesting that Trump shifted Republican and then implemented two of the most important operations in the technocrats' aka transhumanist history: the neural interface through warp speed, and the method of powering the nanotechnology through 5G Cove-Fefe solenoids, not to mention the fact that he consolidated all Jason allocated budgets into Elon's Project X. I see. Musk's family has had an interesting history of being in all the right positions where social change is at stake, and it is apparent that they do not mind being persecuted for these actions. No doubt Elon is in the position to transform human history in the most profound way yet. Oh, and one other little point that a lot of people are making is that Hillary Clinton was born right at this time that they were doing these test tube babies. So Elon may be one of them and Hillary may be another. This is some scuttlebutt going around. If you remember, Hillary was saying that she wasn't a real human. She was, some kind of robot or something, or a clone. Anyway, I'm going to leave it there, guys. I really hope you have a wonderful evening. I hope this information will be able to help you to understand that even if you don't fully grasp it all or know if some of it might not even be true, or you're not sure about these allegations or this information, keep this in mind. We don't know all the facts. We're trying to piece it together. But what we do know is these guys are a can of worms you don't want to open. And they're all connected, and they're all together, and they're all from Bavaria, and they're all doing some hanky-panky. And we can't trust them. And this is a big HOAX on the world, and we need to stay clear and get out of Babylon, my friends. So, I'll leave it at that for today. We'll get this uploaded. Hope you guys have a wonderful evening. The Lord will bless you. Just pour out your heart unto Him and prepare for what's coming, friends. We'll see you tomorrow. Have a good one.